Islamophobia, and that's where we we in a sense got that word. And I triggered to that phenomenon in a book that I call The Islamic Threat, Myth or Reality, which went through a number of editions in the 1990s. And so what the reason why I'm bringing this up as an example is that, here we are so many decades later, and the phenomenon is not only there,
Mm.
but it's broader. The idea that, and as you would know, being in London, the idea that at times you have people who wind up denouncing the mayor of London, who happens to be a Muslim or has a Muslim name, and winds up denouncing him and using provocative kind of language just because of that. And uh,
Hello, John.
back
Back.
back again.
Back
I don't know
again.
what's happening with the internet right now.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, no
No
worries about it.
worries.
I mean, you mentioned your book, the Islamic threat, myth or reality. And now that we're in 2025, is it a myth or is it reality? And if you ask many of those people who attended that protest and or are Tommy Robinson supporters, they will say that it's an obvious reality to them.
Mm.
And they often say things such as the Muslim world or like Islam doesn't work with our society here. And what would you think? And they don't never give maybe concrete examples, but what do you think they mean when they say that?
I think that basically that what you have is to begin with an anti-foreign mentality, and anti-foreign, anti-immigrant. But Islam stands out in that it is, or Muslims, because they are a significant minority, within the UK. Also, what they trade off is incidents that occurred, such as 9/11 and 7/7, etc. And they don't isolate that situation in terms of, if you actually look at the global Muslim community, and you would see that you're talking about a fraction of a fraction, of 1% of that kind of militant Muslim, uh, etc. So they key off that, and in fact, uh, they also play to the fact that in many societies, we see this in America, etc. There is a reaction that is broader than being just anti-Muslim. It's being anti-immigrant. It's being anti somebody who is not white, etc. Uh, but this becomes a kind of key flashpoint for them, and the reality of it is that there we have people with that kind of mentality, and then it winds up leading to violence. And sometimes you can have a situation where the very people who espouse this kind of attitude themselves become victims of violence.
Mm.
So, the hard fact is that, for example, a number of years ago, I worked with the Gallup organization, and we did a book called "Who Speaks, for Islam: What a Billion Muslims Really Think," and
Mm.
and this was a global effort on the part of Gallup, and the clear evidence that came across was a demonstration that the vast majority of Muslims are like the vast majority of a lot of other people. They're very diverse, and you have people who belong to a faith, and those that follow the faith, those that are identified with the faith, just simply because of their background or their family history. But in fact, when you actually looked at what a billion Muslims were thinking, you could see that we're not talking about a religion that is specifically any more violently driven than any other.
Mm.
A fair number of people, for example, in the United States, who are on the far right and militant and anti-Muslim, are themselves far right Christians. whose form of Christianity, and somehow in the name of Christ, which is difficult for me to believe. I'm trained in Christianity, both um, um, in terms of my early personal life as well as my early degrees. I was with the Capuchin Franciscans for a number of years, intending to be a Capuchin Franciscan priest, for example. So, I come out of that background. I also then was a young Catholic theologian for many years during the time of the civil rights movement, uh, the march on Washington at the time, the Vietnam War. Uh, I, I have that knowledge of Christianity, and I also have that knowledge of Islam. And in fact, if you look at the question of violence in many religions, the violence often occurred more in a situation where rulers or government leaders used religion to divide people. So, for example, take the Crusades. Hmm? You had the Pope saying Deus vult, God wills it, but the Pope was legitimating and trying to demonstrate that he had a greater authority than even the emperors. But in fact, much of the Crusades was an imperial war, if you will, that was seeking land and to spread, um, you know, as it were, the political venue, of the ruler. The same thing happens in the Muslim world historically, where you wind up with either rulers using religion in the past, or today movements using religion, that is militant movements, and what that can do is play into those people who are racist and militant. They take those actions that occur and they generalize about it.